Gameforge's In the Hunt, Season 4. Retooled, rearmed with more knowledge to help you reach your performance goals and your next level. In the Hunt members, mount up. It's time for the hunt.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's In the Hunt podcast. I'm here with Brian Bailey, as always, and our very frequent guest, Gareth McShay from Ireland, who we keep up late. Unfortunately, that's what happens when you're in Europe, right? You got to stay up late to watch golf, and you got to stay up late to watch podcasts. So how are you guys doing, Brian? You got some new internet coming?
Yeah, I do. They're drilling in the walls right now. I'm excited. I won't be sitting in Starbucks parking lots and McDonald's parking lots and elementary schools uploading videos. Yeah, it's nothing like owning an internet company and not having internet at your house that works very well.
Yeah, well, internet everywhere. They give you rednecks out there, the old 2400 baud dial up, and figure you're fine for the next 50 years.
Sometimes I wish I had 2400. I mean, it gets that bad out here on occasions. And
sometimes you have 0
No, it's bad. It's bad. My son is a pure victim of trying to game, and I'm lagging. No, you're not lagging. That's just the way life is, son. You're just feeling well behind.
Gareth, how's life in Ireland? How's the weather? Irish?
Really, Mark? You have to go to the weather first.
Well, I mean, I don't know why I bother, because it's pretty consistent. Actually, last 2 or 3 times we've been there, it's been sunny and 72 the entire time.
That's all I know Ireland has.
Yeah, that's all Brian Bailey knows of Ireland. The sunshine and the bikinis, and I have to say, Mark, you do look fetching in a bikini, and everything else that comes with it. So weather's pretty chilly. We've got a cold front coming in. Everything's great. We're simmering. The season's starting to get going. Great. I mean, you're saying golf's on late, but it's a great time for us guys because it's evening time. We're getting to watch some amazing competitors go out at hammer and tongs early days, and I think this is going to be a hell of a season for golf on the tours you should be watching.
Oh, and which ones are those?
Well, the ones, the ones.
The ones.
If you have to YouTube it or go and look up some channel that previously, I believe, had a lot of shows about sewing or stuff like that, you're probably not watching the ones.
If it's on Sci-Fi Channel, we probably are not. That's probably not probably not in the list.
Yeah, if the 18th hole has been interrupted by an episode of Friends from 40 years ago, you're in the wrong channel.
Gotcha. Yeah,
live and let live, boys. Live and let live.
I would have to watch any golf to even know what that experience is like, but I watched a little bit here and there. Anyway, cool. So today's episode, we're going to talk largely about learning things from other sports, meaning not just kind of techniques and practices, but people who are really good at other sports. And what can we learn from that and apply to golf? And in a little bit here, we're going to listen to some interview with Jojo Marasco, who's a friend of mine, who's a golfer. But more than that, he's a very, very well-known former pro lacrosse player. He set all-time scoring records in college that are still unbroken. And he played pro lacrosse, and it's a great interview just about kind of what is that mindset, what put him above the field in terms of, how did you get so good? Was it raw talent? Was it training? Was it mindset? Was it coaching? Was it motivation? What was it? And he gives really great answers on that. And he, as a golfer also, how does that apply to golf, and how does that carry you through? So we'll listen to that podcast, that interview, in a few minutes here. And I will say for myself, there's a lot of things I've taken from other fields that have actually applied to golf. And what a lot of people don't know is that the aim point express read actually came from archery. It's a method that people use when they're targeting things with a bow and arrow to figure out how far away a target is. And we basically just flipped it on its side and used it for green reading. And then it evolved into the full aim point express read now. And a lot of people don't know that, but that was not inspired by anything golf related. That was inspired by a guy who was a bow hunter, Rob Noel down in Louisiana. So I love cross-pollinating and germinating ideas into golf from other activities and other sports and other disciplines, because a lot of times we can learn about a lot and to get better at what we do. Gareth, what is your impression about that, being our resident mental expert? I always love to hear what you say about that, but I always make a real big point to think about how things work in other fields and how does that apply to the field I'm currently working in.
Mark, you broke up there, so I'm not sure who you just called in.
Oh, I called you in.
Oh, great. I mean, I got up to cross-pollination and all of a sudden I'm creating various imagery in my mind and then you started to break up. So I think breakthroughs come when you take things that are not necessarily in theory related and you do exactly what you've just described with Aimpoint Express. You have that moment of cross-pollination and you break performance plateaus, or you come up with different concepts or ways of changing that which is the current norm, which is wonderful. But I would also say in terms of people who have been successful athletes in other codes, oftentimes when I talk to them about golf, they go, yeah, I know how to make a ball curl with X or Y, but golf is different. And I'm like, why is it different? They're going, because the ball's not moving, or it's just harder, or they'll start to go into this really detailed, they'll request a really detailed description on how to make something happen. And my answer always is, your brain knows how to make a ball curve. You've got a ball, you have an implement in your hands, it's what you had historically. What would you do if you had to do it on the hockey pitch, the Gaelic pitch, the hurling pitch, the baseball? Is it called a pitch, guys? What's it called?
Field.
Of course, it's a field. It would have to be different. Baseball field, all those things. And they're like, yeah, but it doesn't apply to golf. And I'm like, it totally applies to golf, because you're basically trying to get a hint of, let's say, for example, for curvature, side tilt on a sphere. And once you can apply that in any sport, you can apply that in every sport, in my humble opinion. And people just simply tend to overthink this rather than simply transfer capabilities and abilities and resources that they have evolved and developed elsewhere and just utilize them.
Right. Brian, what is your experience? You were a college golf coach for most of your life after puberty, so I don't know how much experience we have in other sports. But what has been your experience with that?
Well, I think understanding sport is sport, right? It's managing people, it's managing expectations. It's so all sports cross-pollinate, use stealing Mark Sweeney terms, right? So I think a lot, if I look at this more from the coach's side, kind of what you talked about, is if you've coached other sports, and I played a bunch of sports growing through, puberty. And then from that, in high school, I actually coached soccer, which is the worst sport on earth to coach, because it's even more boring coaching it than actually watching it on TV. And then I did start coaching golf as well. So I think a lot of those things in life and in coaching, they kind of go hand in hand. So for me, when I became a golf coach, I was completely unprepared to be a golf coach, because I just started playing golf in high school. I didn't really ever play golf until then, never took a lesson, still haven't taken a true official lesson with a golf professional. So a lot of when I first took a coaching job, a lot of the stuff I kind of fell back on was, what did I learn in the sports that I played? Played football and baseball growing up my whole life. So from that, what could I apply from those sports to help a team? I might not have been the best X's and O's, teaching how to hit it better, but I could manage players very well, get them ready to play, make sure we're prepared to play. And then I would apply a lot of the philosophies I learned from other sports. Like when you play against another team, you prepare for that team. Well, in golf, what do? You prepare for the golf course that's coming up. What does the golf course look like? How can we attack it? What do we got to watch out for? So you can take a lot of the pieces that you learn in other sports in prepping, and golf is no different than any other sport. Your competitor is the golf course. It's not like I can scream and yell or tackle a guy as he's swinging, so I can't play defense. So I've got to learn to be able to move around a golf course, see that as my competition, and then come up with a plan for each player how to attack that. And then again, to me, team golf is completely a different monster in itself, right? Most golf coaches, almost all golf coaches I've ever met, played golf their whole life. That's it. They didn't really play other sports. So they come in with a very individualistic, they treat everything as an individual, but then all of a sudden you go to college golf and it's all team oriented, right? And a lot of coaches struggle with understanding how to manage a team. So again, it's being able to take, if you've played other team sports, being able to take that inside of the college team and say, all right, we have to move a group of people, keep them in a cohesive unit so we can achieve a goal. Because if we're not a team and we're not cohesive, a la the American Ryder Cup squads, many times we bad things can end up. So again, I think the beauty is, and for any coaches out there that are kind of in the golf world or starting, rely on past experience of other sports and read others. I love to read coaches' books from different sports because one, golf books suck traditionally. They're awful. But if you go into other sports and read about athletes and teams and things along that lines, there's a lot to be learned that you can apply to become a better coach, not a better swing technician per se, but you could be a better coach being able to manage people that way.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I have pulled analogies from other sports. So sometimes when we're doing a feeling slope and doing the Bailey method read, which you invented, Mr. BB, and you're standing, you're bending one leg, and people are not getting it. And if they have experience snow skiing, for example, I'll say, well, if you're standing on the side of the mountain at 90 degrees, what are you doing with your higher leg? And you're bending it, and you're standing on your lower leg. They go like, oh, got it. And I've used sailing analogies for wind and grain and things, and sailors get it and non-sailors don't get it at all. They just go, don't know what you're talking about, and you got to kind of move on from there. So let's go listen to JoJo's interview, and then we'll come back and have a chat about some of the things he says. How about that?
It's time to enjoy In the Hunt conversation because context matters.
All right. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We have a special guest, JoJo Marasco, who is a good friend of mine, who is a world famous lacrosse player. And following a trend that I like to really bring in people who are non-golf people he's a golfer, but people who are really excelled at some sport or some activity outside of golf and kind of bring in their expertise to help us understand how to train and how to be better performers in golf. And JoJo's a perfect example because he played lacrosse at the highest level. He went to Syracuse. He was a first team All-American. He the 2013 biggest midfielder of the year. He was also a member of the 2014 and 18 Team USA men's lacrosse. And he also played pro lacrosse in the PLL. And he also set the Division I midfield assist record in 2013 and is still unbroken. Wore the famous number 22 at Syracuse, and as we know him, JoJo 22. So we're thrilled to have him here, and I'm going to pick his brain about performance and training because he has played at the very highest level and set all kinds of records. And I played a lot of golf with him also. So thank you for coming on the show, JoJo.
Well, thanks for having me, and Game Forge and Mark, you being a good friend and someone that's so high up in the golf world as well. So it's an honor to be here.
Yeah, thanks, man. I mean, the biggest thing I kind of want to dig into you on is somebody like you who has far exceeded your average athlete. So, in high school and college, you set all kinds of scoring records. I've met guys who are in college now who still know about you, and they're like, yeah, I had his poster on my wall when I was a kid. It takes a lot to excel to that level, and certainly talent is part of it. But I think there's a lot more than talent also. And what I'd like to kind of get into with you is, what do you think really set you apart besides being talented in terms of training, coaching, grit? Kind of what do you feel like you did differently than other guys to just be able to do laps around them?
Well, I was always blessed, with some talent, but I always heard that, you got to put that extra work in, that hard work. And you ask any of my friends, my parents, training every day after school and going to a trainer. I had this amazing trainer, Glenn, in high school. And, one of a couple of my buddies who actually ended up playing D1 too. But if you ask my parents, at night, I'd come home even after, going to lacrosse practice and then hockey at night. And then I'd come home and, eat like a 10 and 11 o'clock dinner. And then I'd be down in the garage stick handling or hitting the wall for lacrosse until 12, 1 o'clock, and my dad would have to come down. He's like, man, I'm just trying to go to sleep.
He's like, dude, cut it out.
Wait, yeah, you just I got addicted. You put the time in, and it started showing. I always wanted to be that guy who was the best player on the field or the best player on the ice, and I didn't want it kind of got in my head where if I saw someone that was doing better, I'd start practicing their moves into where I was doing better than them. So I always just took it to the next level, and I would not stop until I made my craft perfection and dialed it in. And it gave me the, the blessed opportunity to play at Syracuse and play, one of the best teams in the world. And, we went to a championship and lost to Duke in the championship. And then I got to play 7 years in the pros, in the MLL and the PLL and Team USA, and got to travel to Japan twice and, be out there. So it's given me such a great opportunity to travel WorldFed too. So that was a big part of that.
Yeah, I think that's a fascinating psychology, where whether that comes internally from the person, but when you think I'm not as good as I could be, and somebody's out there is beating me, and I need to figure out what they're doing. And I know you teach my boys lacrosse, especially Ryan. And I've told them, if you're getting your ass kicked out there, go figure out what they're doing to kick your ass, and go out and figure out what their moves are, what their strategy is, and use that as a method to actually get better, not just to feel beat up.
Yeah, and a big thing too, just like that, and I was always watching, the NHL and any lacrosse highlights. These kids are so blessed now with YouTube, and I didn't really have that, so I was able to watch a clip of the famous Mikey Powell who played at Syracuse, and Paul Rabel, who is one of the greatest lacrosse players ever. And there's just one or two highlights, and I'll just watch those every night, and then kind of just study that, and try to master their moves, and just constantly watching and trying to figure out, there's a reason why these guys are the best in the world. And I tried to, base my training after them, and, just everything that they did, I wanted to do better. So I wanted to have that opportunity. And, then I had the opportunity to, play with some of the guys in the pros, and it was just always trying to do that extra thing. I was never satisfied. And if I had a bad game, I went right back to the drawing board and tried to fix that. And, I was a big proponent of studying film and things like that, where it helped me so much to realize I knew the game better than, in my mind, than anyone else on the field. And I was always two kind of plays or two steps ahead of everyone.
Yeah, that's interesting. I used to train with a guy in another sport who was one of the best in the world, and that's what he always said. He said, I used to just go out. He said he never had a lesson in his life, but he went out and just watched other people, and he watched what the good people did, and just figured it out and made it work for himself. But a huge part of it was, hey, there's people out there already performing at this level. Why not learn from them, see what they're doing, try to get inside their head, see how they're thinking. And you're right, with YouTube, it's unbelievable, because you can go out and watch highlights from anything, anywhere pretty much, and just try to absorb what those moves are and what the strategies are.
Well, yeah, and it's too, I've listened to your podcast a lot, and how intelligent you guys are, and things just like that. Now not playing anymore, I'm just I'm coaching and training and all these kids, and I want to be the next, I want to give them the next thing that I didn't get to learn, and things like that. And when it comes to golf, and being a very, very amateur golfer, but I love it more than anything is I'm able to learn from you guys. I'm able to go on YouTube with these, all these guys, like the good guys, and all the pros are like DeChambeau's doing stuff, and they're just watching them and things like that. I've never had a lesson in golf, but I'm able to hang with, a lot of the big guys and have these opportunities to play with, some great golfers, because they know I have a decent game. And it's just me, in my mind too, is the same thing when I was playing, lacrosse and hockey and football and stuff is, I never wanted to be that guy out there where I'm letting someone down, or, playing with people that they're like, oh, why is this guy out there? Like, they want me, like, I wanted them to want me to be out there. So it's just things like that, it's so amazing now with social media and Instagram and all these things, and YouTube. It's just great.
Yeah. And do you think that's something that was just kind of inborn, or do you think that did you pick up that attitude from a parent or a coach, or it's just, or from being a sibling or something, just that drive? Because I know that drive, because I know for myself, with Aimpoint, if I ever thought somebody, first of all, I was never ever satisfied that it was good enough. And then if I ever thought somebody could do something to rival, I wouldn't go to sleep at night. I'd be like, there's no way I'm going to get beat at this. There's no way.
No, 100%. And, just things like that. My mom is, her whole side's all military. My brother went to West Point. He was a year older or 2 years older. And to see kind of, his mental aspect and what he did to, be there and always perform and things like that always helped. My dad, was a Wall Street guy, and then, had a couple of big companies, and to watch how he worked, it kind of put that in my mind. If they're doing that, all day with 4 kids and being able to wake up in the morning and take care of us and then drive us these practices, and they're spending a lot of money, I didn't want to let them down. So things like that, where it gives you, I wanted them to know that their money was going to the right thing. They're not just out there for, just for fun. Like, I mean, it's fun, obviously, but, I wanted to be the best, and I want to make them happy, and that drive. Just call it, my mom's nickname, she's one of the greatest ladies, nice people of all time, but we call her the General.
The General, that's right.
And I kind of kept that same, motive throughout my life, where I like to wake up early. I like to make sure I never be late. That really kills me if that ever happens. And you want to show the people that you're with, just when it comes to business or sports or coaching, any of that, you want to show them that you're on time, you're ready to go, and you're prepared. And being prepared was a huge thing for me.
Yeah, that's cool. And you do a lot of coaching now. You coach my son. You coach a lot of kids. You coach on the lacrosse team. You're the coach of the lacrosse team at Windermere Prep. When you're coaching younger kids, what are the challenges there in terms of instilling that drive or getting them to practice and to train the way that you kind of know they need to train? How is that a challenge?
Just like going back to that whole social media thing now, these kids have all these opportunities, but it's kind of, it's changed a lot, especially with the younger kids and playing at such a high level and having those opportunities. And I had to work for it, what I mean? And these kids are very blessed with, getting the nicest sticks, getting the nicest gear, but it's always doing that extra work. And I listen to a lot of podcasts from the NHL with some of the coaches, realizing with the younger kids, it's a different generation. So you got to find a way to coach with them. They're not going to accept that old school, what we went through, getting yelled at and, the coach got in the helmet and just the coaches in your face and not really explaining what you did wrong, just knowing that you made a mistake. And now, my coaching has always been a huge thing is, getting the kid off and talking to him on the side, showing what he did wrong in film or just working with them in different ways. And I think just being a teacher helps a lot because I'm working with, middle school kids and it's a whole different, battle this now, what I mean? So they learn a different way. And, I'm going to be tough on them and I expect a lot, but at the same time, I got to really show them because I want them, looking back in 20 years saying, JoJo, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be where I'm at right now. And I always think about that because there's coaches like Paul Carcaterra, he's big time ESPN guy. And I would meet him at 5:30. I'd drive, 45 minutes just to train with him in the morning. He went out of his way, even though he's, building two companies and doing ESPN, working for them and giving me that opportunity. If I didn't have that, I would never be where I'm at today. So I try to do the same thing now as a coach.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, a lot of people listening to this podcast are golf coaches, and we teach a lot of juniors, very highly competitive juniors and amateurs. I'd say a big percentage of my students are, college level and below, and they definitely learn different. It's definitely not the case where you can just be a drill sergeant and say, do this and don't ask questions. Versus that's kind of the way we were probably brought up when we were playing sports as kids. I would just say it doesn't matter why, just do what I tell you and shut up. That's kind of
yes, sir. I won't do it again, right?
And that just doesn't work anymore. So you're trying to create a training program. So when you're creating a training program for your team, let's say, how do you pick apart the skills? Is it an individual level? Is it the team as a whole needs to get better at different skills? Like how do you design your weekly training to get the skills you need? So like in golf, we know kind of what the skills are we need, and we can pick those apart. How do you do that in a team environment?
Well, that's the challenge, which I love about coaching, is especially with my team, is we got some talent, and then we got some a lot of younger guys that are still learning the game, and on a lacrosse field, you want to mix everyone in. You don't want people constantly sitting out, and you're not getting the reps, but at the same time, you don't want those kids. We call them drill killers. You know what I mean? Where you don't want them to they're going to let down that speed of the play. So the challenge is every day or night or morning, I'm trying to come up with a practice plan, but you have to also know that play or that what you're trying to do is not going to work. So you have to change it up on them and do things like that. And just constantly, I'm talking to my coaches. I'm watching new things like on YouTube where different drills that will work with both. And at the same time, you only got 2 hours out there on the field. So you want to give them everything that they can to be prepared for the next game. But at the same time, you got to make sure that they're getting their stick work in, working on their shooting form, learning the game. That's a huge thing that, I promote and teach is watching lacrosse so they can, I can't be that player on the field. I can't coach them on the field. I can't do, play for them. I say all the time, and they got to do that on their own. So that's been always a big, big thing is just kind of trying to give them a game plan and then giving them the opportunity in ways that each player individually it's going to work for the team.
Yeah, it's interesting because one of the problems that we always say about golf is that kids get out there and they get on the practice tee and they're learning full swing and they do a lot of swing work, but they don't necessarily learn the game. And the only way you learn the game is to go out there and play and have people walk you through it and have people who are really good golfers say, here's how they would attack the course, here's how they would attack different holes. And we don't see as much of that. We always worry that there's just too much time on the lesson tee versus exactly what you said. You got to learn the game. You really want to excel at the game. You got to learn the game. You got to learn how the game plays, how the strategy plays out, and not just I need a pretty swing.
Yeah, we see it all the time. These kids can like that. They're practicing, but they're by themselves. We always say when the lights go on, you see who really can show up. And we have guys that are some of the best practice players I've ever seen, but when it goes into the game, it's like they've never played the game before. So, and that happens in golf all the time. You got to be able to learn.
Totally.
You got to see the course. You got to, know the greens or how fast they are, how slow they are, and reading them, and the wind and all those things that go into those factors. And it's the same thing in lacrosse, man. You got to know your team you're playing against. You got to, like we say, see the game. So you got to see it ahead of the game. And a lot of the times, that's what we struggle with even at Windermere Prep. And I coach a very talented 8th grade team for Sweet Lax, and we travel the country. But you play these bigger teams that just they're just very well coached, and you're going through that challenge. And especially in Florida, even though we can play all year round, these kids, they're not focused. They don't know the game in a way that that's why they bring guys in like us where we can teach that and give them that opportunity. Because I'll say things to them, and in my mind, I think it's like the easiest thing of all time, but now it's like the hardest math equation they've ever heard.
Yeah, right. How do you, one thing that we try to do a lot when we're teaching putting is we're trying to stimulate the stress of playing competitive golf. And it's hard to do on the putting green for me, and it's probably hard to do on the practice tee for full swing coaches. But obviously, stress is a factor in any sport. Not just stress, but what do you do when you're getting your butt kicked and you need to, to get out there and try to get your goals back? How do you stimulate, or how do you guide them through that to try to make them mentally tougher and create some grit with players?
Yeah, that's a huge thing, especially with I'm happy to bring up the mental aspect. And that was a huge thing when I was playing pros. And, I'm sitting next to some of the, guys that scored the most points in college history, setting records in the pros, but these most talented guys in the world. But when it comes to the mental part, you get them in the locker room, and it's like they go back to being in like 3rd grade. They always love coming to me because they're like, always like, JoJo, how are you so calm? Like because I was always taught next play. I always make that next play. You're going to miss in golf. You're going to miss a putt. It's going to, even 5-footers. It happens. I play all the time. That's why I love the game, because the mental aspect, it's all in your head. You're there, and you can either, let it get you, and then you're going to have a bad round, or if you can, let it go, and then you focus on the next play or next drive, and you want to start, you go play by play. So the same thing with us, these kids, they're going to make mistakes, and I preach that, and I want them to make a mistake. Just next time, don't do it again. Don't do the same thing.
Right. Don't just keep repeating it.
But yeah, in a good way. Like, now you've learned your lesson, but don't go out there now. That play, if you do that again, it can be the difference between, winning 10-9 and losing 10-9. And that's a huge aspect. Just, calming them down, let them know that, they made that mistake, but you prepared for this, and you're talented, and you put all this practice and work in it, and you got to, that's what takes you to the next level, is putting that in your mind that, you are one of the best. And I try to preach that with them all the time. And because once they get down, you can see it, it's all about, your facial expressions. And we try to really preach that.
Body language.
Body language is huge. Don't raise your hands. Don't walk off the field. And that comes back with my military side of my family, not me personally, but my parents and my brother and my uncles and stuff like that. Is, if you make that mistake again, it could be life or death. You know what I mean? So it's things like that.
Yeah.
Just trying to really focus and just having that kind of, blank sheet in your mind where, that you made that mistake, but boom, you're on the next play.
Yeah, I had a coach once that the worst thing you could do for him is get sulky about something. So if you made a mistake and you sulked about it, he'd walk off. He'd be like, "I'm not coaching anymore." He goes, "You're going to make mistakes. That's fine. Get better. Try to do it, but don't get down and sulky on yourself. Frickin' get back in the game." And he hated that. And I did that one time to him, and he just ripped me to shreds. I was like, "Oh, gotcha." And then I felt like you needed to come like, "They're right. I was sulky. That's just like ridiculous to act like that." And you're never going to be a world-class athlete if you're going to sulk over making mistakes.
No, 100%. And just in the golf world, you don't have helmets on. So, everyone sees your face. They see what you're doing out there and things like that, helps in lacrosse once in a while. But now with, like I said, social media and with the TV, it's on everywhere now for sports. And that's a huge thing that's what we preach is, you gotta carry yourself as a world-class athlete. Even if you're not, your goal is always to show that you're stepping on that field, you're mentally prepared, you're physically prepared, and you want to make that the people on the other side know that you came here, for war, came here to play. And you're not gonna if I see a defenseman out there, if I beat him and then he's like slamming his stick and hanging his head, I'm gonna attack that guy for the rest of the game.
You own him. You own him at that point, right?
Yeah, and that's what I try to preach to all my players, my students, and you're not gonna eventually these kids are gonna be in the workforce, and you show up to work and you're giving attitude to a higher level person. It's see you right now, right? They're not going to take that. So.
Yeah, exactly. you set up any specific drills or failure drills, what we call them in golf, where you specifically give them something that they basically can't beat, just to see how they react to it? So we'll do some putting challenges that are almost impossible to complete, just to see what the reaction is, see if their process changes, see what how their emotions change, their timing. Is there anything similar like that in lacrosse?
Yeah, so I try to do a lot of my drills based on things that would happen in the game. For instance, we do a 6-on-5 drill. We start 6-on-6, so that's how it would be with the offense and defense. And we'll have an issue where, like, say the defenseman, I'll call it a defenseman's name, and he's got to run all the way to the sideline. So then when the offense is 6-on-5, and you guys see how the defense is going to react. See if they're going to come together, get in the box, and see how they're going to play a man down for 20 seconds and things like that. And we do a lot of, like, 3-on-4s where now the offense is down, and now the defense can double. And you're probably when that happens, it's a very good chance you're going to lose the ball. And you see how these guys, what happens after that. Are they going to chase the guy down and get back out there, or are they just going to kind of drop the ball and let the defense kind of laugh at you, things like that? So we definitely do certain things like that. We do a lot of ground ball drills where it is a one-on-one battle versus each other. And if you don't win that, all the other guys are going to be yelling, and that's on you. Like it happened to us in the game the other day. A couple of guys just not going for ground balls, and that was the difference from us getting the ball and clearing via an offense and us giving up 4 goals.
Right. Yeah, a coach I had once says practice has always got to be harder than competition, and he would do drills that would practically make you cry, but then when you actually went into competition, everything felt easy.
No, and yeah, we did the same thing just in the past 3 weeks with running, and I've been each year I learn more and more, and then I saw last year I didn't really get on them enough where they make mistakes, they need to learn from those mistakes, and we better get them on the line. And it's not kind of a thing where like they're in trouble. It's more this could happen in the game. If you turn over the ball, you can be stuck on defense now 3-4 minutes, and that's a grind. If you're running back and forth, it's not fun. And I try to make it even with the running where they're thinking they're in the game. So we do high, fast-paced drills, but at the same time you got to do some running, and it's actually really helped us. And we scrimmaged Ryan's team last week, and they didn't realize that we're pretty fast and strong, and we were in pretty good shape. We were able to fight for the ground balls, and they're a school that's got 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people in their school, where we got 1,600 kids in our whole school, K through 12.
Right,
so, things like that, and that we're trying to command respect, but I gave them the opportunity, so when they do step on that field, they were in better shape, which was a huge thing for us, because it's not fun when they're out there running, but I just constantly preach, like, listen, you're going to realize when you're in this game, you're like, thank God we did all that running.
Right. So you played with a lot of great players, obviously, even up through your pro career. Is there any qualities that you've noticed that even if they're intangibles that some of these guys have that just make them stand apart from everybody else?
Yeah, just the physical aspect, and how they eat and how they train, and the mental part, but things like that. I really got to learn. These guys, even though now professionally, a lot of these guys that are still playing in the PLL are now able to just do lacrosse. For my first 3-4 years, these guys are working desk jobs in New York City. They're doing all different things, and to see how they were able to keep their bodies in such good shape, and you get in that locker room and you're just like, man, what is this guy doing? And things like that. I was constantly trying to pick the brains of the older guys that have been in the league for a long time, because in the pro league, there's only the top 140 guys in the world, and if you don't perform every single game, you're out of there. So I saw that happen a lot.
Yeah.
There's some of the best college players, but they didn't keep in shape. They didn't do the right things. They're out partying, and people see that, and it shows on the field too, man. You only play once a week, so if you're not doing those things on the side, like, it goes back to I started training at a really young age. You got to keep doing it, and that's you look at some of these guys, like a Sidney Crosby or Alex Ovechkin. They're 35 years old and still performing at the highest level because of how they take care of their bodies and what they do, and they're constantly evolving each year, and it's a huge thing. And that helped me with a lot. Like a guy like Rob Pannell, man, that guy is, there's a reason he's, I don't know if he's top 3 or number 1 or 2, but for most points ever, he's still playing because, you see any of his Instagram, the guy's in ridiculous shape. He's never not training, and it shows.
Just a way of life, basically. I've got to go do this. I don't feel like it. No, this is just a way of life.
Yeah, and it's not easy. We go play a game, and then we're my first pro team. We're out of Long Island, but we can go party every night in New York City for a week. And we just got to find a way to. It's pretty easy to go out there.
It's very easy to do.
Yeah, so things like that. We do that, but I was blessed being at school because we got a great weight room, we got a great strength coach in Mike Kurtz, and he gives me the opportunity. I go in there anytime. But and when you're not with a team all week, you have to do it on your own. And that was the toughest thing from 24 to 28 because I'm in a very nice area. I'm making a lot of friends and being able to find that way where it's you got to say no and things like that. You go, listen, man, this is my time. I want to perform. I want to keep playing for a long time. And if usually I can just call someone and be like, hey, let's go get drinks. But that was a tough thing. But I learned from these guys, and it showed. That's why I had the opportunity to play 7-8 years in the pros.
Yeah, I mean, that takes a special maturity level at that age when you don't have parents or coaches telling you what to do, but you gotta keep it together.
Yeah, and you want to keep that thing too. You're starting to get on TV and you want to perform, and just even being at a school, with very smart kids, and they're all watching me play, and if I score one goal, they're like, "What's your problem?" I'm like, "Oh, like, what do you mean? Like,
what's wrong with you, coach?"
We won. I played great. He's like, "Yeah, but you should be scoring 3-4 goals." I'm like, "All right, well, now I got to train again this week to make sure."
Right.
Getting roasted by a couple middle school kids.
Yeah, nothing better than that, huh?
No, story of my life.
So you play golf. Obviously, we play golf, and you love playing golf, right? What is it that you learned from lacrosse that you can carry straight over to golf to help you be a good golfer?
Well, golf was the best thing that's ever happened to me. My dad belonged to an amazing course growing up, and I never played. I hit the ball. I used lefty clubs, and the whole family's righty. And I just never. I was playing so much hockey, and I wanted to play at the highest level. That on Sundays after playing, 2 games that weekend, he'd kind of be like, "Let's go to the course," and I just want to drive the cart. And then when I came down here 10 years ago, I was able to go out with some of these guys that play all the time, and it changed my life. And I was able to, just like I said earlier, once I start picking something up, I want to be the best at it. And but it helped me so much, especially after retiring, because it gives you that that same drive to be a great player, but you're also it's all in your head. You're playing golf by yourself. You're out there lining up. You need to do the right thing every time, because if you take either 1 second off your swing, you're not going to get that shot that you wanted. And things like that that I love, where you bring in the math aspect, and you got to see how far you're going to hit it with the wind, and you're out of the sand. It's all different things where if you don't know or study that, you're not going to have a good round, and things like that. And I've talked to you a couple of times just helping with putting and learning that, and it's just the aspect of how difficult the game can be. But if you put the work in, how it can.
It's so multidimensional. I mean, there's so many skills you've got to get. You've got to train to really get good at it.
Oh, it's unbelievable, man. And then like I said, you can. And the coolest thing about golf is you can have a bad shot, and it goes back to that mental thing. But all of a sudden, you pure an iron, and it changes your life. You're like, this is why I play this sport. What I mean? Things like that. There's no better feeling than ripping one down the middle, and then getting lucky and it landed on the green the second shot. So things like that is just that's been my biggest thing, and just the opportunity of golf where I watch it religiously on TV. I have the YouTube TV records all the time, and I get to watch the best players in the world and things like that. And I've had the opportunity to work with guys like you, who's one of the best in the game for putting, and other guys like Sean Foley and some guys like that. They're just these kids I teach these kids, and then have the greatest opportunity where we're at in Orlando. There's a golf course every 5 miles.
Yeah.
So if you want to get better, it's all on you, and things like that. And it's just it kind of gives you, it's like my happy place out there.
Totally. And I play golf with you. You're loads of fun to play golf with.
Yeah. Well, you
definitely have a love for the game.
And people always love golf with me too, because they're like, especially if I get the opportunity to play with other guys I've ever met and stuff. They're always saying, they're like, man, you can bring this guy anytime, because no matter what, he's always just got that energy, and he's you can tell he's a coach because he's constantly telling you next one, things like that.
Right. And you play some amazing golf courses with your buddies.
Yeah, I've been blessed. Nick O'Leary's become a good friend now, who's Jack Nicklaus' grandson, and he's got us down at Lost Tree and the Bears Club down there. And up here, you got Keens Point and Islesworth, and some of these courses are just so pure. And Brian Carcaterra's got me back when we're in New York. We get to play Sleepy Hollow and stuff like that. So it just that's the coolest thing. Yeah, it's beautiful, and it's the coolest thing is where golf's taken me. Where I never thought I'd have this opportunity, and just because I put the work in, and all these things are, I've gotten to travel the world, and every place I go to, I want to try to play a course there, to see the different types of grass and greens, and it's cool that, the difference between like Bermuda grass and another one and things like that. It's just an awesome opportunity. You can really see how hard these architects design these courses, and to play some of the tough ones really makes you realize how some of these pros are so good.
Yeah. Well, what's very clear to me is that you've taken the way you study the game with lacrosse, and you apply it exactly the same way to golf, as far as watching videos, watching the best in the world, working with whoever you can, best in the world, just understanding the game at a deep level. That's a real champion mindset.
Yeah, no, and the best thing that's like I said, I've never had a lesson. I mean, a lesson as in you and I going out there playing, having fun, and you show me little things with Aim Point, but then I got to do it on my own. Whereas like you guys produce such great opportunities on Game Forge and then through Aim Point just on my own to figure that out. Once you gave me the basics and things like that, then I could figure out and it's such an awesome opportunity with things like that.
Yeah, cool. Well, listen, we really appreciate you having you on here. I've watched you coach for 10 years or whatever, and obviously know you very well. And it's there's a mindset that people at your level have that a lot of people don't have, and it's really important. I think that people just kind of be able to pick your brain and understand the way you think. So we appreciate you greatly appreciate having you on here, and we'll have you back again for sure. Well, if people want to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
Yeah, just on my Instagram, it's just Jojo Marasco 22 and through there. And I've got a lot of, if you go on YouTube, there's plenty of highlights and things like that. If any of you guys want to watch lacrosse, but golf wise, hopefully I can step up and maybe create a YouTube channel eventually if I get good enough.
Yeah, we're still trying to get on the good guys, so maybe we'll get on there. I'm still working on that one.
If we pull that off, Aim Point's going to go through the roof.
Yeah, let's go. Anyway, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. And I'll be seeing you soon.
Yeah, I can't wait to see you, man. And thank you to Game Forge and you guys and Aim Point and everything. And, it's a blessed opportunity to be talking to you and being a good friend and having this opportunity to, expand my knowledge and help anyone that's out there listening.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, see you, bro.
Sounds like a plan. What did you talk about? No, I'm kidding.
I know, I was just going to. All right, guys. One of the things that really struck me, one of the several things that really struck me about JoJo's interview, and what always fascinates me is when I, pretty pressed him on what does he think put him above the average player and made him break all these scoring records. And one of the main things he said was he never wanted anybody to be better than him. And he goes, no matter how many hours it took or what I had to do, and I come home after a practice and I still go out and start throwing balls against the wall or stick handling, because he could have also played pro hockey. And I was like, well, you made a stupid choice there going lacrosse versus pro hockey, but okay, we'll come back
economically,
to that.
Yes.
I always give him crap about that. But he ended up being, again, a world-class lacrosse player. And it was and he said, I never, ever wanted anybody to be better. I always wanted to be the best at it. And my big question there would be, is that an internal motivation, or can a coach give that to somebody? And I think that's largely internal, because I feel that way about certain things in my life where I'm like, I'm not going to let anybody be better at me at certain things, and other things I just don't care at all. You know what I mean? So maybe it's finding your drive or your passion, but I would imagine that most world-class athletes that are setting records all over the place have a very similar motivation where they just refuse to not be the best. And what comes with that is having to put the work in, understand a strategy, and spend the hours. And obviously it's not just hours, but if you're not willing to spend the extra hours, you'd have to rely a lot on talent. Gareth, how do you filter that? What do you think?
Mark, can I just clarify here? You're saying you think that is internal or external?
I think it's mostly internal. I don't know if I'm right, but that's my gut feel.
I mean, the motivation is external in terms of it's other people driving what's happening there, you would have to say, right? And to be the best, you have to be comparing yourself to something or someone, and that something or someone will certainly be external. The internal, it would be the interpretation of what would happen if you didn't succeed in what you're setting yourself out to attempt to succeed, which in this point in time is, I can't handle the pain of not being the best. Or I can't handle the embarrassment or the frustration, whatever emotion they may have attached to that would be critical, and that would be a fuel that they could keep on. And there's a little plug for fuel, folks. That would be a fuel that they could keep on feeding, so that therefore, day in, day out, there's a reason to get out of bed. There's somebody to hate. There's another hurdle to jump over, and another shirt tail to grab a hold of. And it's what behind that is literally giving them that motivation. That can be very unique. That can be, as I say, it could be highly intrinsic in terms of, I will not be embarrassed by that player ever again. I will prove to the world I am capable. And sometimes that's what people are setting out to do. Or it could be, I just want to see how far I can take my own physical and mental capabilities and my own talent and challenge it to the highest levels that the world has ever seen. I think the key when it comes to mental performance, and Jojo is a brilliant interview because he talks very openly about what worked for him, is it's understanding there are no standard set of metrics here. There's no windows you have to be operating within. I've worked with players who are always working away from embarrassment because they just can't handle the thought of hitting a poor shot in front of a crowd, for argument's sake. And I've worked with players who want to be that person who's holding up a trophy and crowds going wild and female or male, spectators throwing various pieces of their clothing at them, going, "Yes, please," and everything in between. So,
yes, please.
Yes, please. I think for the player listening, it's critical you understand what works for you or what is motivating you, and it shouldn't be what your coach is telling you, or your parents, or your peers. And for the coaches, it's critical you understand your players' buttons and why they do what they do and why they consistently show up, and how to feed that in a manner which will allow them to continue to do so.
Yeah, that's fascinating insight. It's almost like a lot of people need an antagonist out there. Without the antagonist, you might not have that motivation. I know I work better with an antagonist, and I certainly have plenty that have cropped up in my life. But it certainly motivates me to get my game in order and spend a few more hours at night getting stuff done. Brian, what do you see when you're working with a team and you get some people that are super, super intensely motivated and just will not let you beat them, and others that are just like, yeah, it's a cool sunny day and I'm a decent golfer, I'm just going to go swing my clubs?
Well, you recruit A and you avoid B. No, again, it just goes back into that management of people. You've got to understand what motivates. And again, as a coach, I've got to understand player X likes to do things X, Y, Z. As long as they're performing, hitting the numbers as we want as a team, like, you've got to give them that freedom and that pathway to be a little bit more nonchalant. I know at Virginia we had Lauren Coughlin, who's playing on the LPGA tour now. She hated to practice, hated to work out, but she could go on the golf course, play lots of golf, and loved it, and learned to play golf and played great. And we as a coaching staff had to change the way we taught her, because if we put her kind of like nose in the grindstone, you have to do it this way, she would fail. But if we put her in situations that was good for her and to perform, she became an All-American, now plays on tour, and we look like really smart golf coaches. But the traditional, she wouldn't work extra hard at anything. She wouldn't put in the extra hours in training. That's not who she was. That wasn't kind of what made her up. But to her credit and the coaching staff credit, we figured that out. And then you had to manage the team, because you had team members going, well, so and so's out there playing and not practicing nearly as hard as you are, and she's in the lineup. And then I say, beat her. We qualify, beat her.
That's the right answer too. You're right. Yeah. But can you beat her?
Can you beat her? Yeah, she doesn't do things like you do, but can you beat her? And if you can beat her, I guarantee you I'll take you. So I think, again, just understanding that each player is motivated a little bit differently. You have the Michael Jordans, the JoJos. Everybody slighted me my whole life, and I'm not going to allow that to happen. And then again, you're going to have some more quiet warriors that are, that just do it differently. And again, for me as a coach, I've got to be able to understand the motivations of my player, and really kind of move them. And I think the one part from JoJo's interview that I really enjoyed, where he said, I just sat and studied other people that were experts in the field. That part just stood out.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up next, because that really stood out. Yeah, because JoJo teaches my son lacrosse, and he's telling him all the time, get on YouTube and watch these guys. He goes, there's world-class athletes doing this already. Go see what they do, figure out what they do, watch their strategy, watch their play. Now, what he's not saying necessarily is go watch their technique. He's saying, how do they play the game? And that's what he kept saying. He goes, you've got to learn how the game is played. And in golf, I wonder if we miss out too much on that. We watch men and women swing on TV, but how often are they saying, now here's how they're attacking this hole, and here's the decision-making process, and here's the targeting on the green based on what score you need to make, or whether you're match play or whether you're trying to maximize birdies. I don't feel like I hear a whole lot of that with golf.
No, I agree. Yeah.
Either one of y'all jump in.
Okay. Well, you don't hear a whole lot of that with golf, because that would mean people have done research and actually have a depth of knowledge about what they're talking about beyond having, I don't know, nice hair, looking good in camera, and maybe winning a PGA Tour event 30 years ago. I want to go back before we go forward, because I also love some of the stuff that Jojo said, and going back to that concept of the external beating the guys, and he spoke a lot about next play. And I sent an interview by TW recently to a player of mine, and he spoke about going to Riviera and saying, I believe I can beat the guys. I'm out here to beat the guys. And so the player sent me back a kind of list of questions. One of them was, he's always focusing on beating the guys. And I said, no, he's using that as motivation. But when he's playing, I can guarantee you he's focusing on the next play. So it's people sometimes make the mistake of going, all he's ever doing on a golf course is trying to beat people up. He's not. He's brilliant at managing next play mentality, but his next play mentality is based upon over 72 holes. I can beat these guys if I stay in this way of thinking. And I think that gets lost a lot, Mark, in how good Tiger was, and what Jojo just said. It was brilliant. It's a great interview for any for any athlete. They should be watching that and trying to pick up on those gems. And a lot of the times you've got to listen to this 3, 4, 5 times, take some notes yourself, and you'll really start to find some nuggets. And I would recommend all the listeners do that. Brian, thanks for jumping in, by the way, with Mark's next question.
Hey, no problem. I've been hanging around Mark so long now. I can basically answer for him now. It's gotten that.
Go for it. I'm going to sit here and
you're a beautiful couple. Can I just say you're a beautiful couple?
Check scores.
We're a beautiful couple. Thank you.
I got to order some groceries while you're doing that.
So sorry, inside joke. No, I really, again, the JoJo interview to me was fascinating. Like I said, I think going and finding experts in your field, golfers, go watch what Tiger does, watch what Jon Rahm's doing right now, which is he literally is making history. He's not getting nearly the love he should. I just kind of did his video breakdown a couple days ago, and he's averaging since basically November of last year about 4 under. So he is basically, which he's won 3 events, which makes sense. That's but insane. He's literally doing something that I haven't seen since we started doing a lot of this breakdown work inside of Game Force. Now, we weren't doing Tiger when Tiger was at his climax, when Tiger was just destroying everybody. But Jon Rahm,
peak or climax?
Peak is kind of what I was thinking, but I don't know. Floor is yours.
The 8-iron shows up in a minute, so it's all good. The climax is over at that point. But really understanding that what he's doing is just this is something to behold, and we as what is there to be learned about from Jon Rahm? What does he do as an aspiring junior, or as a collegiate, or even a professional? What could I learn from Jon? What components? Like, he's a fiery dude, but does it destroy him? I'd say earlier in his career, it might have gotten his way, but he seems to now have been able to harness that kind of anger and that emotion, and he puts it to more of a positive use. So I think, again, if you go back and look at all these different players, and you could even go to that other tour, I don't even know what it's called anymore. But there are some older golfers there that used to be really good, that you could learn stuff from as well, now that they're like 60 and still playing on tours. But again, you do have that ability to go find people and say, hey, what can I learn from player X? And again, it doesn't have to be elbow position. It doesn't have to be P6.3 and what is the face rotation of who cares? Like, there's a lot to be learned from a lot of these guys and a lot of these older guys. To me, my favorite thing on YouTube is go watch Lou Trevino talk about hitting a golf ball. He ain't talking beta torques. He's just talking like, this is how I move a golf club, and it creates a shot pattern, right? So there's a lot to be learned from a lot of these older guys and from these players that have had success. And I encourage, and I tell my son to do this all the time. He's going crazy in the golf. Go find old videos of old golfers just talking about golf. Like, learn from them. They're experienced dudes. Now, sometimes it gets a little crazy out there, but it's okay. So again, it's just starting to reach outside of what you know, and really reach outside of technique, which I think Gareth would love to hear about, is get outside of this technique bubble that we see inside of YouTube and everything, and learn to play the game and learn from the best in the world. So, like I said, when JoJo said that, I was just like, oh, I love hearing that.
Yeah, definitely.
Brian, can I, thanks, Brian.
I thought there was a question there for me, but I didn't hear it. Did you?
Thanks, Brian, for that short observation, as usual.
That pithy response.
If I was engaged with a junior golfer who I was unable to work with in terms of physically being on a training ground with them, etc., and happened to have an opportunity to guide them, I would say to them, go and find 10 swings on YouTube right now that are super funky. None of the 10 look the same. I don't want you to listen to the commentary, and I want you to show me your version of those swings in 1 week's time. All 10. So you're going to learn, you're going to give me mimicry, but it's physical mimicry versus just watching and observing. Because if you're listening to commentary, it's going to affect your personal filter. Each kid will have their own interpretation of movement patterns. That's what they will use to develop anything that happens going forward. I think if you were to put on YouTube and just go, can you make a swing like this? Can you show me an exit pattern like X, right? But without even being that technical, you would see some amazing movements very quickly.
Fascinating. Never thought of that.
You are all welcome.
You are all very welcome. Cool. Brian, do you have any questions or comments to wrap up that don't go more than 10 minutes?
Yeah, man. So funny guys, funny. But I'm still waiting for my reimbursement. So let's see here. Welcome to 3 Questions. The In the Hunt team will field inquiries on performance from you, the listener. We will apply the What They Don't Tell You format to each question, which means we will dive in deep to your subject matter and provide clarity to your question. I had the good fortune to sit down with a couple high school coaches over the last couple of days, and I've gotten a bunch of questions from golfers, high school golfers, as well as a couple coaches. And it's kind of funny that this is literally the questions I got. And they really tied into today's episode, which I didn't really know what today's episode was about until Mark Sweeney about 10 minutes ago said, hey, we're going to talk about this.
I didn't know it was about either until I sat down and turned it on.
All right.
Tell me, I like that time pressure to figure stuff out. I operate better with a lot of time pressure. So here we go.
All right. So Gareth McShay, we'll give you this first question. This was actually from a coach 2 days ago, before we started talking with his players. He's played all kind of different sports, but he's having trouble bringing some of those experiences to his actual training in golf. He's not a golfer. He's a coach that does golf just so they can have a golf team. So he was looking for advice on how he can bring some of that information from other sports he's taught to his golfers. So what say you?
Sorry, Brian, just clarification here. This is a coach asking this question?
That was a coach asking the question for helping his players.
On behalf of the players?
Yeah.
His experiences will not be as relevant as the experiences that his players currently have. So they could help greatly with descriptive terms and metaphors or analogies, but he really needs to ascertain. I mean, most people, here's a simple one, guys. Most people have played table tennis at some stage in their lives, right? And if you've played table tennis, you know how to hit, what?
Ping pong.
Never heard of it.
Ping pong.
I think you've just gone to Thailand or somewhere, but back to so most people have played table tennis. I'm sticking with the terminology. And if you ask them, can you hit a slice? Can you slice the ball and make it spin back? And go, yep. And they'll make air gestures, even with their hands. Go, this is what I do. And how do you hit a top spin? And this is what I do. And you just figure out what the kids have done in the past, right? And an awful lot of time, people don't realize, like, if you've thrown a frisbee, you know how to finish the golf swing correctly. right? If you've skimmed a stone across the water, you know how to make the correct movements through a golf ball. But it's really have the conversation with the kids first, and then create stories around your own personal sporting experiences. And it's much more about the story and the descriptive terms, and maybe creating visuals, putting some constraints in place, putting targets out there that are funky and fun, and asking them how they get the ball to go that direction, as if they were playing table tennis or skimming a stone or hitting whatever. It's really helpful, but you've got to know what the baseline is of what you're working with first before you introduce your own experiences. Otherwise, you're just telling people stuff that doesn't make sense.
Called YouTube.
Yeah.
All right, Mark. This was actually a question that was brought up by a couple of the players, and I figured this is right up your wheelhouse. What are some of the common areas you see the difference between high school and college golfers, like good golfers, and next level, kind of that elite amateur player, as well as a touring professional? What do you see some of the bigger gaps as they're kind of building their career, high school guys, and looking for that? What common gaps do you see in that?
Well, if the first obvious thing that comes to mind is as you go from high school to college to pro golf, your funnel gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. So you're weeding out all the people who don't really care about golf. So I wouldn't say I get a lot. I get some juniors who they obviously just don't care. Like they're out there because their parents are kind of pushing them and they maybe want to get a scholarship, but there's no love for it. By the time you get college, and then definitely if they want to go pro, there's an inherent kind of love for the game, which is going to drive their practice. That's kind of from the mental side. From the technical side, ball striking develops first, and then the better and better the player gets, it shifts more to short game and putting. And if you don't have a really good short game and putting by the time you get to pro golf, you're done. Bye-bye. You can't shoot 73 every day and stay on the pro tour. I was out with Tommy Fleetwood this morning doing an aim point putting cleanup lesson before the Florida swing. And at one point we were doing, aim point reads for chipping, and just watching him around the green chipping was spectacular. I was like, okay, if you land at 10 feet from the hole higher, it's going to break this much. If you land 20 feet from the hole lower, it was this much. And he hit every shot he wanted to right on the spot. And he hit his landing spot right exactly every time. He hit the trajectory he wanted every single time. I never see that from college golfers. Like literally hit 30, 40 chips and he never missed his landing spot once or his trajectory. And that's a level of skill developed that you obviously have to have at that level. But I've never seen it like that, even with a very good college golfer. I haven't seen ball control with a wedge like that.
Very interesting. So definitely putting in short game are the anchors for the high school collegiate compared to kind of the elites on the tours. And then, yeah, the love of the game. I get it. The other question, I guess I'll ask myself since I wrote these 3 questions down. Brian, I have a question for you. Yes, sir. Basically, they asked, why the hell did we start GameForge? I was like, I have never been asked that question. That is from anybody other than, my wife going, where's all this money going to? No. So why did we create GameForge? When I got out of college coaching, I called Mark Sweeney and I was in a, like, what the hell am I going to do with my life kind of moment? And we sat down and we sat down at a pizza shop in Charlottesville and we talked about what we could do. And we came up with something called Junior Golf Crossroads, which is kind of what we're trying to do, but it's not the way that we planned on getting there. It's GameForge came out, and a lot of it was from our dissatisfaction with the way that golf is taught. It really is that we were, not satisfied with, how people train. So we came up with a training platform. Nobody used it because nobody trains in golf. We had college coaches that said, hey, we're not going to run a stat program and then do a training program and put in multiple inputs. It goes back to conservation of energy, human condition. I don't want to go above and beyond. So they said, you got to come up with a stat program. Hence, GameForge came about. So why is GameForge the way GameForge is? It's really driven by really lazy college coaches. No, I'm kidding.
Well, and from my point of view, I didn't know what the heck my students were doing once they left the putting green. No idea what they're doing.
No.
Didn't have any visibility to any performance metrics.
Yeah.
And it's hard to be a good coach when you don't know what they're doing when they go play.
And I always said that being a college coach, the best thing you could do about being a college coach is you had 10 players or whatever. You saw them day in, day out. You saw them compete. You got to walk the golf course with them. You got to hear what they think. You get to hear beliefs. You get to hear their fears. You get to hear all this stuff. So as a collegiate coach, and even technically a high school coach or a big junior program, you learn so much. And basically what we try to do with Game Forge is give you that knowledge and information and be able to put it in a simple package that understand what's important now, what are the answers, and how do I move. And that's really the essence of what Game Forge is. But how we got here, it was a little crooked and a little funny. Capitalism driven by the market. People told us what they wanted, and we work hard at trying to do it. So to me, that was really funny. I've never been hit with the why the heck did you guys create Game Forge before?
Yeah.
So that was cool. And of course, with the high school kid, I was very polite and gave him a very judicial
Uncle Brian was polite and politically correct.
like when I'm in public and don't know anybody.
Right. You know a high school kid's going to listen to this, right?
None.
Exactly.
I've looked at our demographics. None. We're okay. All right, Mark.
Cool.
So we'll let you wind this one up.
Yeah, thanks guys for joining me as normal. I read a book back when I was probably mid-20s called How to Think Like a Genius. And one of the concepts it said take two ideas that seem completely opposite, seem like there's no correlation or no relationship between two ideas, and figure out a way to connect those ideas. And a lot of that is literally, when you're looking at other disciplines and other sports and seeing how can that apply to golf, it's kind of the same idea. And I really encourage people to take an interest in other disciplines, say, okay, what makes a championship sailboat racer or a downhill skier or a table tennis player? And you'll find a lot of parallels, and you'll find some really good analogies that go from that can be applied to golf. And if nothing else, it really opens up your mind. So I think a lot of what we're talking about here is just how do you do that? How do you take the best of other disciplines and apply it to golf? I'm a big fan of doing it. You got to carve out time in your day to do it, because otherwise you just get so buried. You know how it is. You get buried with golf 24/7, and you don't take the time out to think about something completely different. But I think it's a great, valuable exercise. So anyway, thanks you guys for coming. We will see y'all, I don't know, whenever we decide to do another podcast pretty soon, next week. This week or next week, we're going to release JoJo's full interview Friday, I think, right, Brian?
Correct.
Yeah, and it's worth listening to. It's cool. He's a cool guy. He comes from the top of his sport. So great insight there. Anything you guys want to finish up with?
Mark, I totally agree. I think it's going and watching other sports is not taking time away from golf. It's taking time developing your sporting abilities. And if you can, I'm going to quote a genius here, cross-pollinate between ping pong and soccer, for example, then you're really getting somewhere. But honestly, I mean, go and watch a sporting event, take a notepad with you, and just write some things down. Look at it through. It's always going to be through your own eyes, from your own perspective. But go and watch other players, other athletes, other codes. Go and watch them, if you can, how they warm up, how they cool down, how they do other parts of the game that aren't as evident as the actual performance itself. And take a notepad, take some notes, and go home and think about, what if I applied this to my golf game? And that cross-pollination will occur, and you could come up with something genius for your own personal performances that would be extremely empowering.
Agreed.
Wow, I'm impressed.
We just fried Brian's circuit, so we're going to
Mark,
shortcut him and end this podcast now.
If he's quiet, if we've silenced Bailey, just cut it now.
Yeah, fuse blew, I think. So, Brian, thanks for joining us. I'll let you sit there and let your ears smoke a little bit. Anyway, thanks everybody for joining us. As always, if you have questions, let us know, DM us, whatever, email us, Instagram. We get a lot of things on there. My Game Forge and Instagram. What's the other one? Do you have an one on Instagram, Brian?
Yeah, we just started the Fuel Performance Network as well. So we're going to put majority of our video stuff there. And then that way Game Forge can go back to just providing the world's best data and information on how to get better. So I can kind of separate the two. So you're just not getting inundated with all the new wonderful releases that we have inside of Fuel, which is at videos.mygameforce.com. You should be a member. And if not, I'm shaming you now. You should be. But we've kind of separated the two. And what you're going to start to see on the Fuel side and the podcast side is we might have some new voices coming in the not so distant future. So be on the lookout for that. But yeah, thanks everybody for listening once again. And we're excited to see you guys within the hunt next month.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We will talk at you later.
Thank
Bye.
you.
This has been a Fuel production.